Hello friends, it is that time again with That Erickson, and today we are taking a look at the Mage class. I want to start a series of going over the classes of the champions in Shadow of War Mobile. So we're going to get started. As of right now of this recording, we have 4 mages, and I'm going to start with the one I believe to be the lowest rank and work my way up. And the first one we're going to look at is Shalab. Okay, now we're going to cover their subcategories. We're going to cover their skills and maybe a few teams where they could fit in. So her first skill is Shalab's Brood. Now the blue numbers here represent numbers that could possibly change or increase depending on the level of the skill. So, you know, don't use these as gospel. It depends on the level that you level the skill up to. So in this case, she summons a swarm of spiders to a AoE area, so she's an AoE drop. And they enter that area, they're dealt damage over a certain period of time, and they are poisoned. Now, poisoned means that the target receives 50% reduced healing. As far as healing goes, I'm not entirely sure how efficient healing is or how often it actually happens. I hardly ever see the monsters healing anybody. So, that being said, I'm not really super impressed by this skill. But, you know, AoE damage is always good, but all of the mages do that in some way or another. Like, Galadriel just does tons of straight healing, straight AoE damage. Saruman does AoE and he has a stun, and Gandalf has fire. So I feel like Shalab's is probably the weakest of the few, but, you know, if you have better experience, please let me know. So next is Devour, and she hits an enemy 3 times, dealing 1033 damage each time, and healing herself for that damage. Now typically that would be pretty good, but what I think about mages is that if they are starting to take damage, they are most likely going to be dead soon anyway. So I don't know if this 3 damage is gonna save her life. To me, I don't know if these abilities are very impressive. Almost all the other mages have something where if they auto attack, they just do splash damage to everyone around them, and I feel like that's way better. Once again, this is all personal opinion. If you guys believe that you think she's better, please, you know, let me know. We can start a discussion in the comments below. Okay, her third skill is Poison Fang, and on every 5th basic attack, she's dealing some bonus damage and once again poisoning the target. Now, I don't feel like this ability is doing much different for every 5th basic attack. That takes a while. So pretty much I feel like the Shalab's Brood is going to be out anyway, so why do you need to have poison again? It's not like stacking it does anything else. I'm not really impressed with this skill at all. Like I said, I haven't really noticed how effective healing is. Maybe this will be better in PvP scenario where you're dealing with more supports, but since that's not in the game just yet, I just don't feel like she's got really good kit. The abilities here tend to lean towards PvP, and since that's not in the game, that is how I'm basing my rankings. But, you know, not to say she's a bad character at all, but out of all the mages, I feel like she's the weakest. Well, let's take a look at her tier 7, her ring level 7, and this is giving ability power to every evil ally. Now, I do like passives that deal out bonuses to all of your specific allies, and that's pretty cool, and we have a lot of good evil characters that we can talk about for the synergies here. So she is obviously going to synergize with that, and let's see what other subcategories she has. So she's evil, she's a manipulator, and she's a Maiar. So let's go ahead and take a look at some possible synergies. So obviously we're going to not really look at the good guys so much, but let's take a look at Golem. Now Golem is good for her, but the problem is that his tier 7 is actually good to have a mix of some good allies with Ringbearer. Does have some other things, triggers with the evil, because he's one of the few evil characters. Unfortunately, Saruman, who is one of the other mages we're going to cover, is not evil. He's only manipulator, Maiar, so it doesn't really trigger well with him. We do have the Tower of Sauron and the Hand of Sauron. The Tower of Sauron is pretty cool as a support, and he's going to pump up the ability pen of allies as well. So those two are obviously going to be a good backline. Tower of Sauron and Shalab as a backline. seems very effective. Ratbag, what does Ratbag have to offer here? He's going to give some more ability penetration. So, if you combine maybe one of the two supports, you don't want to be running two supports and Shalab and then like a melee DPS or a melee tank. I don't know, maybe you could do that. I feel like you're going to probably want to choose one of those two, and we'll cover that when we get to supports. How I feel about Ratbag just yet. I haven't been super impressed. But anyway, let's get back to our mages. Now, this is a tough one, because for me, I feel like Galadriel and Saruman are very close. Going to give a slight nod to Saruman just because he has some more status effects on his abilities that Galadriel does not. But let's take a look at Galadriel, and it's very close. I think it would be much bigger gap if Saruman had some better subcategories. So for Galadriel here, she has a ton of subcategories. She's an elf, a Lothlorien, she's a ring bearer, and she's a leader. A lot of the free-to-play characters trigger a lot off of this. A lot of them trigger off of leader, a lot trigger off ring bearer. And if you've been lucky with some of the elves, you'll get some elf triggers. Let's take a look at her skills. So Frost of the Eldar. This is just basically a big AoE damage blizzard storm in a targeted area where she does a bunch of damage over time. No effects, but the damage is pretty substantial. I feel like she wipes out backline creeps and anybody that rushes your party. She's really good at clearing that out. So I feel like she does more damage than Shalab, minus the poison, which I don't feel has been very important. This is the ability I really feel that pushes her over the edge in terms of Shalab. She deals damage to a random enemy, and then she splashes about half of that damage out to enemies near that target. I always see this trigger as a huge explosion, and people just die. And this is just a passive ability. It's, you don't need to control it. It seems to always do the trick at the right time. I've been very impressed with this ability. Obviously, ability penetration is pretty good. Once again, these blue numbers will go up, so depending on your level. But as of right now, at level 43, that's a lot of ability pen. Can't go wrong. And finally, her tier 7 passive is to give ability power to all elf allies. Now, there's a good deal of elf allies. A lot of them go together with her. So, for example, let's take a look at some of the synergies here. You're going to be able to synergize well with her with Celebrimbor because of his Ringmaker ability, which is giving ability power out to all Ringbearer allies for 60. And Celebrimbor is an elf, so he's going to get power from her. So those two are just a huge damage dealing combo in the backline. If you then add on maybe Talion, because you have Celebrimbor and he gets a passive off to him, then you can throw in maybe a tank, maybe even just Castamir, and hopefully you can just out-damage them without the need of a tank. There's a lot more options for this team than there is for Shalab, and that's why I rank her a little bit higher. Now let's take a look. The next mage is going to be Saruman. Now I could go either way, where I think Galadriel could be in front of Saruman and vice versa. The only reason I think that Galadriel may have a slight edge is because of his just lack of subcategories. Just Manipulator and Maiar. He doesn't trigger well off of a lot of things. Not that impressive. But his abilities, on the other hand, are quite impressive. So, he does an AoE lightning, much like all the mages. Targets are blind. Blinded targets miss all basic attacks. That's pretty good. I don't know what the maximum level of this would get to, but still 2 seconds. So, Eye of the Storm blinds people. You can't go wrong there. The only problem I have with this is that it says deals damage to a random enemy, and then that struck target is blinded. So if you drop it into a clump of 4, you had bad RNG, you might not blind everyone in that group thinking you will, because it's random. You might just blind one person. 2 seconds is kind of short if you think about it. They're going to get 4 strikes. You have a 25% chance each time. Maybe you're going to hit the same guy a bunch of times, and then it doesn't feel as good as it was. And you can't direct who you're going to blind, right? You might blind someone you don't even care about. So, it's tough. It's a toss-up. But I feel like the effect will outweigh the fact Galadriel's damage. Voice of Saruman. He deals 1,000 damage and then terrifies enemies for 2 seconds. Terrified enemies run around fleeing. Now, I always am a big fan of these if I'm in a high range composition, meaning the team doesn't have to chase down the enemy. If you do it with a group of a lot of melee and they run from you, you might get aggravated. It's, oh, I gotta chase this guy down. But if they're ranged and you position yourself well, the range will continue to hit as the person's running around in circles. So you can move your ranged units up to the middle of the screen so that they don't run and chase the terrified monster player until PvP comes out. So I feel like this is a pretty good ability if you are good at micromanaging your units. Forbidden Knowledge is, like I said, most of these mages have something where they just do splash damage to everyone around them with their basic. So this seems amazing. Now, dealing damage near everything is always good. Mages are meant to do damage. They're made to do damage in a AoE. So this ability, just a little icing on the cake. And finally, Saruman gains 36 ability penetration for each Maiar ally. So, you know, not that many Maiar allies that I know of off the top of my head. Pretty sure it's just Bob. Else. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just Shalab. You really don't want to be double dipping with 2 mages in... Oh, Gandalf too. You don't want to be double dipping with double mages, so his tier 7 really isn't that good. So, you know, looking back on it, I feel like Saruman and Galadriel can go both ways depending on what your roster has. I feel like most people are going to get more benefit of Galadriel early because it's easier to get good characters, and then maybe later on when more evil characters are released, Saruman is going to, I feel like he's going to push ahead. But for now, I'm kind of ranking them close. And finally, the granddaddy of all the wizards, we got Gandalf the Grey. This guy's kit is nuts. I unfortunately didn't get lucky enough to grab him. Didn't open packs when he came out. But let's just look at his kit. So he has Narya's Fury, deals damage to nearby enemies and burns them for 3 seconds. Burning will take damage for nearby this burning target, so for each second. Now, you know, that's amazing. I feel like burning at least has some other abilities that it triggers with, like Celebrimbor has something where if he hits burning targets, he gets more damage. I haven't really seen much interaction between poison on any ability, so this is the first ability that interacts with another ability. But obviously this is going to be very effective. Let's also look at all the amazing subclasses that Gandalf has. He has Maiar, he has Free People, he has Leader, he has Ringbearer. There's so many builds and teams you can put him in that he's just the top #1 mage by far from a big picture standpoint. Let's continue with his abilities. Flame of Anor, he summons a shield that protects himself from damage 10 seconds, and if it's not destroyed, it explodes, hitting everyone and stunning them. So, like I said, I'm not super huge on defensive abilities, but this is a defensive ability you can control for damage and crowd control. So if he's not hit, you can take a look as soon as you see the shield go on him, count down 10 seconds, and then move him into a group of units, let the shield fall off, and it's going to hit. Or it's going to come at the clutch time where you need him to survive. Does that, but the crowd control, the ability to manipulate this ability is really amazing. As typically the other abilities that everyone else has are automatic. This is automatic, but you have some control of who you're going to hit with this, and when it kicks off, how you're going to use that depending on the situation. So it gives you an extra layer of playing with it. Now this ability is just insane to me. Gains 6 ability power each time he attacks an enemy or uses an ability. I don't know how much that's going to equate to by the time you get to like a 4th wave, but it's got to be a lot. You know, maybe you're hitting enemy 5 to 6 times, and there's 4 enemies. Maybe you're getting between 10 and 15 shots every wave. Talking maybe 60 ability power per wave on average. That seems like a really good ability. Fire, it's a passive, you're going to just forget about it. He's just going to scale up. The longer the battle goes, he gets stronger. It's awesome. It just might push you over the edge in the end. And let's take a look at his tier 7 passive. He increases the ability power of all Free People allies by 28. Let's max it out. So at max, he's giving 565. Flamdring is doing 125 ability each time. Gee. Okay, so there's a lot more free people than there are full characters and manipulators, and like I said, most free-to-play and basic level characters are going to have more access to free people than they are the evil. So this is just making Gandalf the Grey the #1 ranked mage as of today. He's going to be who you're going to want to get, no doubt about it. Amazing. So that is it, guys. We have covered all 4 mages. Just briefly, let's take a look at runes, because from what I've seen, almost all the mages have the same rune sets. And remember, the rune sets can be moved around. And I'm going to suggest avoiding these defensive ones for the same reason I mentioned before. Why would you want critical avoidance on your mage? Is she really getting hit that much? And then if she does get hit, is avoiding the crit going to save her? Probably not. Ability defense. If you're noticing she gets targeted a lot, you can switch. But I just don't see any reason why you wouldn't want to go full ability power on your mages. So tier 1, focus on offense. Avoid these defensive ones unless you are starting PvP. Then it might be useful, because I'm sure in PvP people are going to target or try to target down the squishies first. Then it might be useful. But in PvE, enemies hardly ever go for them, and if they do, they're squishy and die. So stick with offense for now, guys. Tier 2, the tier 4 rune have, again, critical avoidance and dodge. I'm not a tank, I'm a mage. Same thing here. Ability, defense, and armor. I would stay clear of these sides in PvE. This is what you want. Ability power, ability pen. Gravy. You're going to want these. Stay away from the defense until PvP comes. And finally, it's going to be more of the same. Sides are very defense-oriented, critical avoidance and health, or ability, defense, and health. And in the middle, ability power and health. Why would I not want ability power? Just think of all the scaling that you do if you took it in years. That's my suggestion, guys. Let me know what you think. What have you been doing with your mages? I'm interested to hear what you've been using and what you think of these ranks. If you agree, disagree, let's talk about it. I'll be covering the rest of these classes coming soon, so stay tuned for that. I have some news on the channel. It looks like a lot of really cool Android games are coming out. We're going to look at Archeage Begins. We're going to be doing Lineage 2. And I will also be having my Extra Life Marathon next week. So hopefully you guys can come check that out. And always stay tuned to the stream. We're trying to stream maybe once or twice a week right now. It's been a tough schedule here, so hopefully we can pick that up. And as always, guys, it has been That Erickson. Until next time, take care, friends.